Additionally, we see a spectrum of people in today's society. Firstly, the vocal gays who speak up to fight for their rights. Secondly, the ultra-conservative right-wing people who are against such ideas. And thirdly, which is basically the majority in society, the people who remain in the middle of the two extremes, who simply remain apathetic so long as they are not affected. So let's move on to my substantive on this whole idea on the balance of rights. So firstly, let's weigh the rights of the ultra-conservative right wings against the rights of the gay community. We think that fundamental rights, such as accessing housing subsidies, having tax reliefs, things that come with marriages, are denied for people of gay communities simply because of the fact that the laws do not allow this. We think that in such cases, where these two groups of people are both a minority, they're both living the extreme ends of the spectrum, we think that what we have to weigh is which one does the government have a duty more towards to? Which group of people have their rights not been given to them when they have been denied the very fundamental rights of being in a society? So you have to understand the ability to getting married is very simple. We don't understand why people such as the gay community, people who simply like people of the same sex, cannot get married just because some extreme people in society think that it's wrong to do so, think that it's not religious, think that it's blasphemy to do so. We don't think that that's justified, but more than that, we think that individuals should have the right to interfere upon the way of life so long as their rights are not infringed upon. What this means is that I cannot simply go up to a random man smoking on the street saying that you can't smoke here even though it's publicly, legally allowed, just because I don't like it. I think that the person still maintains a certain level of individual autonomy. The same way that laws are formed to provide as much individual autonomy as possible, we think that you shouldn't restrict the rights of the gay community. We think that if you weigh these two rights together, when we weigh certain fundamental rights, such as benefits that marriage provides, we think that these ultra-conservative right-wing people already have their rights fulfilled. They already can get housing subsidies, things like that. We see that if we look at the gay community, what happens is we see a pool of people who are denied such fundamental rights, such fundamental abilities to function as normal as other people in society. I think that that is wrong. So moving, yes, sorry.
We tell that whether law is passed, right, the oppressive nature of society will still make people not want to come out against benefits.
Not true, sir. We think that laws are the very first step which you can go to achieving equality. I'll basically touch a little bit on this idea on why we cannot rely on societal acceptance, while Kim will go on further to explain why this will work. Right, so moving to my second idea, why we simply cannot rely upon social acceptance. Let's examine the nature of democracy. The very nature of democracy is basically this idea whereby the majorities are tyrants. It's a tyranny of majority idea, whereby democracy is such that as long as the majority votes for a certain idea, that idea is passed. What this then means is that the minorities, the gay people, are then left behind. I would say that even if majorities are in disagreement, the protection of minority rights is still something that has to be protected, simply because of the fact that the majority are not able to stand for it. I think that when you somehow allow gay people to get married and hence get access to housing subsidies, what happens is that these majorities may feel that their rights are then their benefits somehow being compromised, simply because of the fact that now more people competing for the same amount of houses. Which is why we cannot simply rely on the majority to make the sort of right decisions to benefit even the most minorities in society, and we don't think that that's fair to somehow allow it to work that way. More than that, we think that laws treat people's morals compass. Citizens exist within the states and made of morality and not the other way around. What this means is that the state adapts and improves itself faster and better than people can. Which is also why we see that the state's job is to guard everybody's interests fairly. We don't think that the state is in a position to discriminate people just because the majority somehow doesn't accept them. So moving on to the third idea, or why it's justified for governments to do this. We think that the larger mandate of the government is tap the people who are disadvantaged by societal structure. Which is also the reason why we see that poor are getting more subsidies, more health simply because of the societal structure where capitalism is so dependent upon such that the poor remain poor. We think that same logic over here, where the gay community is so oppressed and so suppressed in the current society, with laws such as the 377A, which doesn't even allow them to do simple stuff such as having sex. We think things like that. Government owes a greater duty towards such people who are marginalized and oppressed in society. We think that government, especially the case of gay rights, when this discrimination has been so long, so prevalent, even longer than, say, taxes, we think that the government then owes a greater duty to help these people in need. Because these people are oppressed and suppressed in current status quo under current societal structures, and government then has a duty of care and duty of responsibility towards them. Please go inside proposition. Thank you.
Thanks. 好，这首第六点 TPD 的 TDD， THBT 然后 TJ adaptation。Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
Now, she said that actually implementing laws is the very first step of societal acceptance. We said no, actually, because laws are really very, very hard to dispute issues. The fact that a law is erected, a law is put in place, is because there is a very large problem, and the law is there to solve the problem. But ladies and gentlemen, if we're going to talk about societal acceptance in this aspect, we say that implementing a law here will not in fact solve the problem because the law is way too harsh for such an intricate and critical issue as this. Because it is a very sensitive issue, and you don't implement a law straight away as in this, the first step. We say no, that is not the right way to do it. And the second point would be basically what should be about the government's mandate to protect gay rights. And we say that yes, this is exactly what we're trying to advocate also. But allow us to show you how purely using laws to advocate to protect gay rights rather is in fact rather detrimental to not only the country, not only the minority group, but also the integrity of the legal system. All these points will be addressed later in the substantives. Ladies and gentlemen, our stance for today is very simple. For a law to be effectively implemented, the government must ensure that there is a consensus from the people, simply because if you simply put a law there and just hope that the people would follow it, it's really rather not only time consuming, it is rather futile as well. Because we are not against the passing of laws in Singapore. We're just trying to urge the government to create an equilibrium, a healthy equilibrium, a healthy balance of both laws and the consensus of the people. Yes, ma'am.
Given that we have already established that the moderates are simply apathetic and do not care, we think that when such rights are being infringed upon the gay community, something has to be done.
Now, ma'am, you talk about infringement of rights of the gay community, and that's why we're going to show you a better way. We're going to show you why not only our solution is better, but the fact that your solution is very, very rather flawed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, continuing my stance, we're trying to basically promote, we're trying to advocate a healthy balance between both implementing laws and advocating. We're going to do both. I'm going to show you why this is better than their stance. Because their stance comes with a lot of holes, their stance comes with a lot of problems, of which I will explain now. Look at it this way. There was a in 20th century in southern US. There was actually sexism of KKK, and if any of you don't know what is KKK, KKK is or Ku Klux Klan is basically this white supremacist movement, which basically eliminates black people, kills them because they think black people are inferior to them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, law was erected in the 20th century to prevent this. However, look what's happening now in southern US. The Ku Klux Klan is still very prevalent. It's still very prevalent in this country, and they still believe that they are more superior to the blacks. And therefore, we show that we can clearly see that in this area, the law has failed simply because of the failure of the government to create a better consensus between the people. Because we say that merely implementing a law, yes, it will stop the action. We fully agree that it will serve as a deterrent. However, at the same time, it doesn't prove the negative connotations. It doesn't improve the society's mindset of the situation. Another example would chewing gum. Now Singapore has in a sense banned chewing gum. They say, no, you're not allowed to eat chewing gum here. You're not allowed to buy chewing gum in Singapore. But look at it this way. What's happening now? In status quo, people are still buying chewing gum from Malaysia. They're still consuming it. The simple reason being that they feel that it is their right. It's okay. It's very fine to eat chewing gum, to consume chewing gum here. And because of this social consensus, because of this failure of mindset, we say that law itself has failed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, on this note on the mindset of the general population, right? But basically, the law stops you from doing things, but it fails to change why you think things look this way. And therefore, we urge the government to come up with this solution. And this solution that we propose basically promoting and advocating while passing a law at the same time. We're going to basically create a stance of social acceptance before implementing a law, because not only that will it ensure the effectiveness of the law in the long run, it will also ensure that the society as a whole progresses effectively, progresses in the best manner possible. Ladies and gentlemen, the mindset of the people of the general population is extremely important. Now, look at it this way. Singapore prides itself as a multiracial society. But however, we see that there are still many people posting racist comments on Facebook, racist comments on Instagram or Twitter. Now, why is this the case? Even Xiao also mentioned this. That's a deep set fault line in Singapore's community, and he agrees. And this is a very large fact that because there is a lack of understanding of people, there's a lack of consensus from the general public that says yes, Singapore should be a racially correct society. However, because of this lack of understanding, we see that there is still a prevalent factor. There's still a very prevalent large number of people who feel that I don't care. Those Malays are like police and all that. All these stereotypes are still prevalent simply because of the wrong mindset of people. Yes.
Are you really going to abolish all these anti-discrimination laws and let people kill each other and get happy?
Yeah, it's not saying we're not doing anything to laws. We're saying erecting laws is perfectly fine. We're just gonna advocate and promote and basically strive for a general consensus before advocating the law. Because if you're gonna advocate the law before you're arriving at a general consensus, not only will it create a taboo on the law alone, it will create unhappiness in the society as a whole. Now, ladies and gentlemen, from what I just explained to you, we can basically see that because of this deep set fault line in Singapore and all these in these societies, we can see that the mindset of the general population is extremely important. Because without the correct mindset, without the general consensus of the government with the people, we see that there is a failure of the integrity of the legal system. Not only is this infringing upon the rights of the minority, we can see that this infringes upon the right of the majority as well. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what have I shown you today? Basically, I showed you why it's extremely crucial for a law to be implemented only after a general consensus has been arrived. Because not only are we going to create a very stereotypical society, we're going to create a society that basically looks at the law as taboo. Just look at Margaret Thatcher. Look what happened. She basically went around implementing laws because she felt it was correct. With the full associates of her, she came out and she implemented laws in UK because she felt it was right. But look what happened. Everyone was unhappy with her. The society itself didn't benefit as a whole. Obviously the law she implemented created basically deterrence for people to commit crimes. However, the society as a whole did not progress. It failed to progress simply because the mindset of the people stagnated in this very important abyss. Ladies and gentlemen, the mindset of people, as I clearly showed you, is extremely important. Because without the failure of the mindset of the general population, the law would be useless, the law would be irrelevant, the law would not be credible at all in this aspect. And ladies and gentlemen, for all these reasons, please do go recite my petition.
Okay, next speaker, please.
At this point of debate, right, the entire thing is boiled down to one main point of attention, and that is whose solution is better. Is it the proposition's solution of enforced change, or the opposition's solution of organic change? Now, dealing with the first remarkable on how our solution will invoke a backlash among the people, and they will all be angry against the government. Now, my first speaker has clarified that, well, the ones who are vocal, like let's say the extremist right-wing conservatives, are not just because they're vocal and therefore they are coming out. They are very active in social they're very active in social activism, does not mean that they are the majority. And we have pointed out that there is this neutral majority party that can be swung to any side, and the debate has gone on to which side can more effectively swing this majority towards socially accepting the minority. Now, they have pointed out something about the KKK, wreaking havoc in South America just because they do not agree with the anti-slavery laws. Now, we can't, you see, which is better? And they said something about, oh, we should get people's acceptance, like acceptance of the law. They should get people's understanding first before implementing the law. Now you see, which is better at swinging societal mindset? Is it only just advocating while your law clearly states that you are clearly against, let's say, gay rights, or do you want to change the law and advocate at the same time? When you advocate gay rights, and then the change in law has shown that the government has clearly condoned the marriage of gays, this would change societal mindset much more easily, because it is now much more convincing than rather than the government sounding all hypocritical when the law clearly states otherwise. Now, you see, even when a minority group such as the KKK is going to wrap havoc around, we said that we should not sacrifice the rights, such fundamental rights of the minority, so that we could pander to the wants of the vocal and the violent. Just because they are loud, they get their points, they express their views in such extreme ways, does not mean that we should pander to what they want and sacrifice the fundamental rights of the minority. Now, never mind that never mind that they cross house. Their policy organic change, which is all based on organic change, takes a very long time to achieve. Now, what do you have to say about that?
Well, we're not basically advocating that we go along with such bad people and their ways. We're just trying to create a consensus within the government and these so-called bad people you speak to create a better society for everyone.
Now you see, when you are advocating something and yet the laws which is controlled by you, as the law states, you disallow gay marriages, and yet at the same time you are encouraging people to accept gays. I mean, how does that logic work? I mean, you are both objecting them against them getting their rights, and yet asking people to accept them. And this is precisely why your solution of organic change and how we should slowly make them agree and socially accept the minority will take a very long time. And in this, 100 years, the minority will still continue to suffer. And now on to my next point about how the law should wait for people to agree first before it's implemented, right? Now you see, this is not the point of the law. Maybe if we have to get the agreement of people just to implement it, then only implement laws in the first place, since it's a general consensus and people will not flout it. So now on to my rebuttal on enforced change. Consultative on enforced change. Now you see, as the first speaker has said, there's this large amount of people who are empathetic, and thus this minority rights do not clearly affect them, and they do not mind the implementation of such rights, with the exception of the extremist right wings, conservatives. Now, we see that this group of extremists are ever present in any social movement. Like what you brought up, the KKK was this particular group that fills this position during the civil rights movement, and they started a civil war, and yet the government still went with it. The government still went with it anyway. And now, let's say in New York, you don't see people. You don't see people looking at African Americans and thinking they're slaves, right? So now you see the government. On my second tier of substantiation, government should not be tied down to this vocal minority or their beliefs. Two examples. One is of the the secularism of states on how the right to practice religion and your religious beliefs does not superimpose on how the state is run. My second example is on how the beliefs of KKK did not stop the government from granting the African American minority rights and eliminating slavery. And third tier of civilization was on how things are only acceptable because it was first followed by the law. Extreme right-wing conservatives often use the fact that the government does not allow such actions as oblique substantiation of the disapproval. They draw gay marriage to things such as incest, to things such as bestiality in order to condemn it. They keep using the line, even the law does not allow it, see, to further the rhetoric. And this is hard to take down, especially when the law clearly states that it does not condone such actions. You see, even if the state approves, they can't prove it because the law says otherwise. It just makes the state hypocritical. By changing the laws to condone it, the extreme right-wing conservatives then will use their irrational basis to disapprove, and a silent neutral majority could then be more easily swung towards accepting the minority more easily. And this leads to normal socialization. And when people get used to it, and gay marriages becomes the norm, then this is when they will start gaining social acceptance. And therefore, I am proud to propose.
Right, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Alright, so I'm just speaking what? I'm just looking at the side as well to the second speaker. Now, what he said one thing. By the government basically changing their stance by enacting a law, they feel that the irrational right-wing people, the irrational hardliners will no longer support such irrational behavior. It does not make sense because what they're saying is, let's say I'm homophobic, let's say I do not like gay people, and they say, oh, the government now says gay rights, so gay people are okay, so what the hell, let's go along with gay people, let's go along with gay people, and because the government says so, but it makes no sense. And they also not respond to how the majority of people are apathetic, how they're easily swayed, how basically when they're easily swayed, logic will always prevail, logic will always trump irrationality, logic will always result in them supporting the logical movement rather than the irrational movement. Because we feel that this large majority is actually supporting gay rights, they're actually supporting gay rights because there is no logic in anti-gay rights, there is no logic in saying that all homosexuals are bad. And also, on my further right, they brought up this thing of saying we require a law to actually change social stigma. No. Because no matter whether a law is passed, the social stigma will always exist, even though, let's say I'm a racist person. Even though there are laws preventing me from calling an Indian smelly, I still think in my mind,
Is it better or worse that this Indian is protected from being called smelly?
Let's look at it this way. There are two types of behavior. One is latent behavior, one is manifest behavior. What you're trying to do is just curb manifest behavior, but latent behavior still exists. People still have these negative connotations, negative stereotypes. People will still think these negative thoughts about Indians, about minorities, about gays. And we feel that this is not effective at all. What we feel is we should gain social acceptance first before actually passing a law. We should actually gain social acceptance, we should get the support of the majority, we should get the support of the public, of the populace before we can actually pass the law. Because let's look at this way, Singapore, no matter how you look at Singapore as a democracy, what is a democracy? The majority wins. Majority rule over everyone else, majority rule the country. Well, what are they proposing? They're proposing that a handful of people in parliament are going to say something, and just because they say it, their word is law. That, Mr. Speaker, is tyranny. That is basically the rule of the minority over the majority. That they try to force the ideals, the mindsets of few people in parliament onto the whole of Singapore without even consulting us, without even looking for social acceptance. Just say, oh yeah, we think it's right, so go ahead and do it. Now, this brings me on to my points. Now, my first point would be how,
Given that you characterize people to be so racist and so sexist, things like that, prove to us, give us a speaker to tell us how you will then bring this social acceptance that you speak of.
Right, I'm going to bring up examples. Now, you see back in maybe the 1900s, early 1900s, the black people the black African Americans, no one liked them besides themselves. The white people all thought them as slaves, thought them as inferior, even though they were under the law equal. Now, why? Because there was no one who actually dared to stand up to oppose it. But look around 1950s, 1960s, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, all of them came up, all of them stood for African American equality, all of them were saying, oh, we blacks are just as good as you whites, we blacks are equal to you whites. And because this whole movement was formed, and because it's now there is minimal racism in America, because of such people who have dared to stand up, who have dared to found social movements and actually formed initiatives to combat such racism, to combat such stereotypes against minorities. So we can show you how actually social movements have actually acted as a catalyst to passing laws, and laws do not act as a catalyst to social movements. And now, my points. My first point about how the minorities will actually be negatively affected by the government passing a law. Now, let's look at it this way. Let's say Big Dot or LGBT, they go on and on about how we should gun for equality rights for homosexuals and lesbians. And they're saying that, oh, lesbians are equal, but the fact that no matter how much they said, the minute the government has to step in, before they're done actually convincing people, the government steps in and says, everyone has to surrender. What the government is basically, the message the government is sending is, they are not effective, is we have to step in to change your mindset. The government should never have to change our mindset through laws. Mindset should be changed through education, should be changed through enlightenment, never through laws. Laws basically act as a backup in case some crazy idiot tries to cross the line and kill someone. Like example, let me show you a very clear example. Let's say not everyone knows that homosexuality is okay. Not everyone thinks that being homosexual is okay. Some of them are still actually anti-homosexual, but it's very different from, let's say, a law banning murder. Because a law banning murder works. Because all of us know intrinsically that murder is bad, that killing another human is bad, but not all of us intrinsically know that homosexuality is good or bad. Actually, people on such effects, we can't say that it's an overwhelming majority. Can't say there's an overwhelming majority on any one side. And so basically, what they're doing by passing a law before actually having social acceptance, it defeats the purpose of having any social movements, because such social movements message will actually be compromised. So people just go what the government says so must be true. Which is what we do not want to breed in future generations. And second, would be how the feelings of the majority are compromised. Now, as my first speaker has brought up, my first speaker has given an example of how Britain, back then, they were a very economic country. They always rely on the people to debate and have discourse about what law should pass. But when Margaret Thatcher stepped in, she said, no, I think this is right, my party thinks it's right, let's run this. And because this annoyed, it angered the British people, and which is why up to now when she died, they threw a party in the street. Because no one likes her, no one even respects her because of this. The minute you try to impose a tyranny of the minority over the majority, no, especially in a democratic country like Singapore, people will get upset, people will shout, people will revolt. And we feel this is not the kind of mindset we're going to do in Singapore. We want to make the people angry at the government, angry at the homosexuals because of this law, because of the repealing of 377A or any other law that might come about. Now, what we're saying, which they don't seem to get, we're not saying that we should only have social movements. We're saying that social movements must come hand in hand with laws. We are saying that there is no better or worse. We're not saying that we should have all laws and no social movement, or all social movement and no laws. We're saying that we should have laws working hand in hand with social movements so that we create a better, brighter future for our children, for further generations, and with an actually holistic approach to solving such problems of racism, anti-minority sentiments, or homophobic sentiments. And also, there's this one thing that they like to bring about, how the fundamental rights of the minority must come before. I mean, I agree that fundamental rights always come before, but what's going to happen? The minute that you circumvent the standard democratic process to grant fundamental rights, to grant any rights to the minority, what you're doing is you're ignoring the rights of the majority. There are people that, all of you have no say, what I say matters most. What you're doing is by circumventing the rights of the majority just to implement your own mindset, to implement your own mindset as a law. This will basically annoy the majority, this will anger the majority, because this will imply, this will send a message that the minority is better than the majority, which is a message that we do not want to send. This is creating a new law that we feel is completely wrong. And because of this, side opposition is proposed that we feel that social movements should, we feel that law should not be passed before waiting for social movements, and we feel that both should come hand in hand. Thank you.
I realize it's a bad time to ask this, but what's the motion again?
that minority rights are better implemented by the courts than waiting for social acceptance. Societal acceptance.
Some believe minority rights
Better implemented by the courts than waiting for societal acceptance.
better implemented by the courts than waiting for society acceptance. Okay, Andrew. Okay. Next becomes.
So I wasn't aware we were opposing parliaments now, right? I wasn't aware that side opposition suddenly decided to oppose parliaments and the way they operate, right? But let's never mind nonetheless deal with what they did say, right? Let's ask two very, very important questions. First, we need to ask ourselves, how do we decide which rights the government or the court should favor? Second, which way to better ensure societal acceptance? First question, how do we decide who we favor? Well, they told us basically, the minority, and the minority who is not gay, but the parliament in this case, should not get the right to decide, everything that goes on. Well, we think they do, right, all the time. We think that you democratically elect members of parliament to make decisions you feel will best represent you. The kind of democracy they are talking about is direct democracy. It's not what we stand for. But more than that, right, even if we concede that our process is undemocratic, we give you very strong analysis as to why it should continue. Mainly told you in her speech that when you have majority rights, you cannot entrust the majority to act on the behalf of the minority. The same way we don't allow the rich to decide how much welfare the poor get. The same way we protect the poor despite whatever the rich, even if the rich are the majority of society. There's an analysis that mainly concludes that we don't think that side ever really fails. So we think even if it's undemocratic, we still take this point. But more than that, right, let's ask ourselves, how do we decide how do we best decide, which people we should favor? And under this, again, we need to go back to a bit of what Ming told you, right? When she told you things like fundamental rights need to be protected more so than your right to have your views respected or heard in society. And when Ming told you this, right, their only response was, yes, we agree. Then we don't see a problem with this debate, right? When we very clearly say that if at the end of the day we have to weigh people's acceptance or ability to accept these laws in contrast to the protection of these very basic and fundamental rights, then we're very willing to make a trade-off as we lengthen the process by which, or lengthen the time frame by which we need for people to accept these laws, as long as, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, these people are getting protected. We think the example of the KKK is completely rubbish in this case, right? Well, their solution to it, we try to convince the KKK that black people aren't so bad, and in the meantime continue to allow them to lynch more people, right? We think that's the kind of world the side opposition fundamentally is, and we think that's completely flawed, no thank you. And we think, there's a big problem. We're just going to continue to allow innocent people to continually get disenfranchised by the system simply because there are certain groups of society which disagree. So we think that, on their side, right, their entire case is premised on this assumption that, if we can win people over, that's enough. But we agree, right? But we cannot allow for, we cannot wait for these long periods of time to occur, especially when the laws are against the rhetoric of the gay movement, against something that Ken talked about that they never really responded to. So let's look quickly now at the second question, okay? Very slowly, rather. Who better ensures societal acceptance? So their side is presenting us with contradictory rhetoric, right? They're going to have the government tell us two things. First, gay rights are important and you should respect them. But two, we're not going to pass laws in support of gay rights. We think these two are fundamentally incongruent. So when it's possible to try people for having gay sex, we don't think it's very tangible or palatable for the government to come up and say, you know what, we support marriage equality, we support gay rights. So we think that in and of itself, right, their entire stance is contradictory and impossible to carry out. But let's look at what else they told us, right? They told us, that we need social movements as capitalists. We agree. But we think it's very hard to fight the oppressiveness that is laws and governments. We give you the example that they gave us, right? The idea of the civil rights movement. The fact that the civil rights movement took so long to gain momentum is precisely because the laws at the time dictated segregation, that the laws told people that black people and white people were fundamentally different. We think it's ridiculous to expect these movements to fight against the huge momentum that is the government's laws, and the impact that they have on people is enormously large. So we think it's ridiculous on their side to suggest social movements have to do it all on their own. We think it's fundamentally disgraceful that they should suggest such a thing, but more than that, we think it's immoral that they leave the protection of individual rights up to people whose these rights don't even concern. So we think on all these grounds, we better ensure societal acceptance. But more than that, what did Kenway tell you? Kenway told you that people are responsive to changes in government's laws, right? That Kenway told you very clearly that when people change, when the government changes its laws and adapts its mindsets, people necessarily follow law. Given that they never challenge our characterization, that people are necessarily largely apathetic to begin with, right? Given that they've never challenged this fact, what Kenway substantive does essentially is that it shows us that if we adjust the paradigms under which people continue to choose to exist and to watch themselves, then by far the non-socialization effect that Kim talked about is going to happen. That people's mindsets are gradually going to shift towards one of societal acceptance. If at this point we have to concede that we're going to lose the right-wing, hardcore conservative minority, then fine, so be it, right? We can rather have the mandate of the entire society to agree to these people than to try and pander our entire society to try and fit in these small minorities and their completely ridiculous and radical views. So we think on these grounds alone, right, we think we already we can be better ensure societal change. But let's take it a step further, right? If we compare to what their side has, at the end of the day, we think what their side has failed to give us is a tangible way in which their policy could feasibly, or their paradigm could feasibly even work, right? Because we think they've offered us contradictions after contradictions, right? When they tell us things like, oh, the government is not going to pass a law until it's against societal acceptance. But at the same time, current laws are against these movements. And we think that's what they fundamentally haven't understood. That it takes a law to pass marriage equality, right? So until that law is passed, that means that the state looks like it's always going to be against gay rights because it doesn't allow them to get married. We think that's the kind of problems we think that's the problem with some opposition's case. At the end of the day, they fail to tell us how the government is going to be able to juggle these two. So at the end of the day, what have I shown you? I've shown you a couple of things. Right? First, I've shown you that the government in this case always needs to favor the minority because it's been disenfranchised, because we don't allow the majority to make choices on its behalf when it comes to the protection of its fundamental rights. Secondly, I told you that at the end of the day, right, it's very difficult for social movements to gain traction without the backing and mandate of the government, especially when the backing and mandate of the government is against you. That is when social movements lose traction, that is when they lose ground, it's when they stagnate. And for all these reasons, I am so proud to propose.
Alright, thanks. Next speaker, please.
The good news is that the debate is not there. The bad news, unfortunately, is just the very for 170%. The main fact of this debate revolves and centralizes on four main questions. First, who best protects society? Secondly, who best protects the minority? And thirdly, which side has the best solution to solve this problem? Lastly, we see that which laws can particularly be catered to certain groups without needing to consult by and large the public as a whole. So we tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that when you need to consult the public is when it has been proven that similar laws enacted causes widespread disapproval. Let's take, for example, real life case. Let's take, for example, KKK. The only response that they've told you today about KKK was that first they told you that the government actually supports KKK, and then they told you that the laws passed by the government actually combat this. You understand that it doesn't really help because we see that the problem is further exacerbated when the law is passed, and people still continue to buy, people still continue to have this market attention. So we see that the primary issue here is that their side doesn't really solve it. We tell you that because of effectiveness, we tell you that their policy isn't really effective because one, the only thing the laws really do is that it's a deterrent measure, but it doesn't really go deep in and solve a person's mindset. It doesn't really solve a person's rational thinking. Neither does it solve people irrational thinking. So it doesn't really solve someone's mindset with regards to this issue. What it solves is that people have to comply to coercion. People have to comply to laws. So we don't see how they actually work. So ladies and gentlemen, we tell you a very simple analogy. How our case protects the minority, how our case protects the majority, and how our case protects society as a solution. Firstly, wouldn't the minorities feel further victimized when they feel that whatever social movement that they want to establish is because of these very social movements that tend to result in the creation of better laws? We tell you because of these social movements that tends to cause a change in the legal system and the way the legal system works. Because of societal movement, it creates pressure on government to actually change the law. So firstly, we don't say incentive on the government's part to change these laws. We see that the government only steps in to make a change when there's societal pressure and when there's enough pressure on the government to actually cause the change. So firstly, we tell you that when can people start to change? When can people start to apply pressure? First, we tell you that people start to apply pressure when they are educated about the rights of the majority in their country. Yes, sir.
The analysis that my first speaker gave you, that you cannot entrust the majority to protect the rights of the minority.
Thank you. Now we tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it's very pivotal because we don't want a situation whereby the majorities are completely chaotic. We don't want a situation where they are absolutely enraged by the kind of policy. And we tell you that even with your laws, it doesn't really hold any justification. Because even with your laws, people are still going out and committing this rampant racism. There's a clear example of Singapore where even though government puts anti-racism chants in their law, we tell you that it's been widespread and it's been quite rife and prevalent. So we tell you that they don't really solve the issue by enacting laws. First, they don't really solve the issue because people still go out to commit it. Secondly, it doesn't change the ingrained mindset and people are still more likely to do it, although a bit less in the open. Secondly, we tell you that the further victimization of minority groups who feel that their social movements might not really work and that they're being condemned for actually going social movement and feel that the government will resort to desperado measures to create laws isn't going to work as well. Thirdly, we tell you the majority's feelings are also adversely impacted. To show you three very important logic. First, on how the minorities need to be protected. Secondly, how the majority's rights should also be respected, and how societal as a whole functions, whether or not laws need to be imposed. We tell you that because of this sensitive issue of minority rights, we tell you that we cannot simply impose any sort of law without consulting the widespread population for fear of the minority themselves, for fear of majorities who feel enraged, and for the sake of future ramifications, which are going to elaborate. No, thank you. Now we tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that what are the future ramifications that might happen. We tell you that when simple laws can be passed without having societal consensus, it makes the minority groups even far more braver, and it causes more audacity on the part of minority groups who will start to rebel and revolt even more because they'll feel that the government is going to pass laws no matter what, even if the majority are completely against it, they're going to pass laws simply because the minorities actually feel that they themselves want it for their purposes. Okay? Yes.
We're only doing this simply because of the fact that we want the minorities to be placed on an equal footing with the majorities that we so speak of. We don't think that it should be marginalizing them or suppressing them.
But unfortunately, that's why the policy really does not reason. Because firstly, we tell you that the minorities won't actually feel at ease with a law being passed. Minority will only feel appeased when they realize that the majority has truly accepted them, and you don't really get a sense of acceptance even if laws are passed. Let's have a look at Britain. Britain people don't feel that even though there's a clear-cut law, even though there's a clear-cut line drawn and a law imposed about how people should not be racist. Now we see there's widespread racism because people don't really care. People don't really care about laws. When in societies we say racism as prevalent is because either one, there aren't much cross-cultural diversity present in the country, or second, when people actually understand each other without the need for law enforcement. First, we tell you that it's because of these people actually succeed in society. This is when the minorities will actually feel at ease. When minorities realize that not only is there a law passed, but society has also embraced them to get part of their community. And that's the only way that minorities will truly feel at ease. No, thank you. Now we actually tell you what majorities have. Because minorities will only feel at ease when we truly embrace the only way forward, the only true way forward. Because we see that law enforcement hasn't really worked in the past. We tell you that what has worked is social movement. Now we want to tell you about this big argument. Abraham Lincoln created so many uproar and furor in society. I mean, in America previously. But we tell you that even though laws were enacted, it never combated the problem. Nor will it ever in the future, because it's been so ingrained in us that we won't change by someone's coercion. What happens? The only problem of slavery that stopped surfacing in America was due to none other than Martin Luther King. He did not create laws. He was a social campaignist who campaigned for the equality between blacks and whites. He campaigned for the removal of the unfairly justified attack of slavery. So we tell you that because of Martin Luther King's revolution, it was a social movement that provided the catalyst for legal system change, and it provided the proper legal system change that would want in America where people are more embracing. Because we tell you that fundamentals have been shown, there's no way in which laws can be passed without even consulting the vast majority. Now we tell you later, what have we proven to you thus far? Under our side, it's a very clear start, a very simple analogy. And that simple analogy is that we want people to do it amicably, and there's no point in forcing something down their throats because it hasn't worked before and it will not happen afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you. Alright, let's get the next speaker, please.
Points that we've seen in this debate. The first one will be basically the effectiveness of laws. Both sides agree that laws do serve the deterrent, that laws are in fact effective. But ladies and gentlemen, we're trying to basically propose to you a better solution than the others. That is basically to just wait and try basically advocate for a social consensus before implementing these laws. Now, okay, they say that our example of KK was completely wrong, but ladies and gentlemen, we can look at KK like this. Then in the past, they say that America had enacted laws that said, oh well, black people are inferior to white people. Ladies and gentlemen, that was in the past. If you had listened to my earlier example, I said in the 20th century, they had erected a new law, a law that said black people are in fact not inferior to white people and any discrimination should be frowned upon by the government. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we see that now in southern US, we see that there's still prevalence of KK. And ladies and gentlemen, what does this show? It shows that basically that these laws have been tried and failed to solve this problem. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to offer you an alternative, a better alternative to change the situation for the better of not only the country, but for the people who are being victimized, the minority in southern US who are being victimized at the same time. And like what my previous speaker mentioned about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, all these are social campaigns that basically move for a social consensus instead of going for straight to the laws, diving straight to the laws. And look at what has happened to them. They are now social heroes because it's changed the world. Because they had the initiative, they had the power to actually shape the new society that exists now. And ladies and gentlemen, it's over the course of time. Because over the course of time, this KK thing had changed. It wasn't because basically the society and the world had matured over time. The world had come to see that, well, we shall try and strive for equality between all races. And therefore, when they said that our example was completely nonsense, I don't think that really holds water, does it? Now, the next one would be, okay, well, basically they said that when laws come before social acceptance, it's basically, we're going to change the laws and then we'll change the people. Well, we said that this is the exact example of tyranny, because you're not only going to, like, for example, let's say I don't like eating apples. What the government is going to do is that, let's say they're going to impose a ban that says, a law that says every person to eat apples at least 5 times a week. Now, they're claiming that over the course of time, I'll grow to like apples because I have to abide by this law. Ladies and gentlemen, this is enforcement upon an individual. This is forcing upon an individual to change human rights. And see, there's an exact example, perfect example for what tyranny is. And we don't want to live in a society whereby tyranny is so prevalent as they so earlier mentioned. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we feel that now this debate has come on to whether it's long-term solution or instant gratification. Now, basically what they're trying to say is that by enacting laws before a social consensus, we can see that there is a direct change in how society behaves. But we see that there is a problem here because we see that there is a problem in the long-term solution. There is a lack of long-term solution here. Yes, for the moment, you may stop gay people from marrying, but what happens in the long term? We see that there is an uprising from the gay people because they are unhappy with the government. We see that society as a whole would be unhappy with the government. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not a society where we want to live in, where we see groups of people, different groups of people segregated from each other, and we see groups of people going against the government because of their own personal reasons, because of legitimate reasons they're going against the government. Ladies and gentlemen, we see that a side government here is quite underpaid in this area. And the next one would be basically about mindset, like what we heavily emphasize. Basically, you can change how the person acts, you can change what the person does, you can't change the person for what he thinks. And in general, that's why we propose to you a solution whereby you can not only change what the person does on his own will, but also by the way he thinks. In general, this is we're going to try to promoting basically a perfect equilibrium, whereby both sides can exist, coexist. We're not against laws. We agree fully the benefits of laws. We're just trying to create a better equilibrium by having healthy balances of both. And for that reason, please go beside opposition.
Right, thanks. Last speaker, please.
and gentlemen, at the end of today's debate, what do we see? We see a rather parallel debate, right? Let me explain. Firstly, within the side opposition, today's entire debate has not dealt with my points. What were my points? My idea was basically on the balancing of rights. And why is it so important? Because by leaving it untouched, basically, firstly, they are conceding that the call for governments to act as majority consensus is legitimate. And secondly, on the idea that governments should act regardless of should act for the benefits of even minorities, even if the majorities don't agree. Within on these two counts alone, the fact that they've considered and not dealt with it, our point stands. But more than that, they've never really touched on the main idea of change in this case, on why enforced laws, or why this enforced change will actually work. What they actually tried to do was to provide an alternative solution. But more than, wait a minute, sir. Let's remember my clarification, my very first clarification. We think that it's a value judgment debate, and we don't think that we should call for any sort of policy. But that's alright. Let's just deal with what actually happened in today's debate. We think that we have answered two main questions. Firstly, whose paradigm is more efficient in helping these people? So if you take a walk through their own paradigm, what you see is that people get bashed up. Why? Because society somehow don't accept it, and therefore we shouldn't pass a law. That's essentially what they're saying. That's essentially their stance, whereby they say that you have to wait for societal consensus before you can pass laws. Throughout our three speakers, what have we questioned you on? Firstly, how are you going to have this happen? No answer. Secondly, what is the point of laws if there's already a societal consensus? We know that the stance actually works. What we actually have is a very idealistic conception. Why? Somehow you have the gay people getting oppressed and getting bullied for another 100 years, and suddenly after 100 years, an angel will fall from heaven, and suddenly there will be social movement. After this, we brought up this idea of Martin Luther King. Right? Okay, Martin Luther King fought for the removal of segregation laws. It's also about laws. Right? So we don't think that their policy actually works. But if you look at outside, what have we proven to you under efficacy? We've proven to you, right, first and foremost in my speech, that laws help change people's perception because governments adapt faster and more effective than the people, and people are encompassed within the morality a bit of the government. But more than that, theory has also shown you how our enforced change, people who want that further, how our enforced change will actually work. Because only when you have laws in place, only when you have set the base for these kind of movements, can we truly have change. So moving on to the second idea, who better protects the people in society. Firstly, ladies and gentlemen, set our